Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is David Meltzer, and I welcome you and thank you for joining this really interesting webinar. I am the Secretary General of GVF. GVF is the Global Trade Association for the satellite industry, representing the entire ecosystem with members that are operators, manufacturers, service providers, really the whole range of the satellite industry. And again, I want to thank you for joining today's webinar, which is produced in association with Connectivity Business News. And I also want to thank the sponsors of today's webinar, who are the creators of the brand new online training material for those in the space and satellite industry, Space Business Qualified. And these courses, these online courses, are really a great way to onboard new staff, to broaden knowledge of existing staff, as well as prepare staff for increased responsibilities, and very much encourage anyone interested in learning more to go to spacebq.org. That's spacebq.org. Let me introduce our panelists for today's webinar, and thanks in advance for the really excellent and welcome participation of a great panel. First, you see an image. We have Philippe Lau. He's the head of telco at Eutelsat. We have the vice president for products at Gilat Satellite Networks, Gil Elizov. We're also joined by systems engineering manager at Spacebridge, Amir Kashani-Zadeh. And finally, Jerry Collins has joined us. Jerry is the director for networks product management at Intelsat. So let's begin. As you know, the title of this webinar is 5G and Satellites, Hope and Reality. And this description we prepared a few months ago, but it starts with the much hyped 5G networks of networks arrived this decade, and media has recently taken to concluding that 5G has not yet lived up to its hype. And just in the last couple of days, as part of my preparation for today's webinar, I just did a quick scan, went online to see, is media still on the bandwagon of saying 5G has not lived up to its hype? Quickly came across an article that appeared just 2 days ago on Tuesday in a publication called 5G and Mobile Strategies. And here the headline is, Operators' 5G investments show no clear signs of paying off. However, the article is fairly balanced. It quotes the CEO of Verizon, which is a leading mobile network operator in the United States. And it quotes the CEO to say, quote, "The need for best-in-class 5G networks is here and now. We will keep expanding our network and developing new use cases with our incredible partners to deliver all that 5G has to offer." So very much full speed ahead, very bullish from the CEO of Verizon. But this article that I said appeared just a couple of days ago, it does quote an analyst with Lightshed Partners. And the analyst says, and this is in the context of the US market, new 5G mobile services have failed to materialize. So gentlemen, first question, and really open it up for everyone. Help the audience make sure, let's start with a common understanding of what is 5G, and in particular, what is the role of satellite in 5G? Why are we talking about satellite in 5G is essentially the first question. So who would like to take the first stab at answering this basic question to our common understanding?
David, I'm happy to take that one.
Great, Jerry.
Start off the discussion. Look, I think it's almost, you need to kind of look backwards a little bit. You need to look at the cellular industry and what the cellular industry have always, promised, and that is wide area connectivity. And wherever you go, your services will follow you. That was the goal of kind of 2G when we had GSM, 3G. We had a bit of satellite included, and we all got a bit excited, but it never really came to fruition. 4G kind of doubled down on mobile broadband. And I think really in 5G, the vision around 5G was, first of all, how can we make this more attractive to businesses? and industrial use cases? And how can we deliver on the vision that 5G services can be everywhere and that we can deliver it to people wherever they are, no matter how remote their location, whether they're in a plane, whether they're on a ship, or whether they're in an otherwise difficult to reach location. So that is the role of 5G. That's the role of satellite in 5G. We're in many ways, we're completing the 5G vision that, we're really only at the start. We've seen 5G deployed in cities, you've had increased capacity, you've got extra spectrum, you've got greater throughputs. But in many ways, it's kind of more cake for people who've got cake already. And really, we want to expand it to people, places where people can't get cake. And that's where satellite fits in, I think. And as well as adding mobility and reliability. But I think for me, that's the starting point.
Okay, so it's reaching areas that the terrestrial network perhaps can't reach, or reach in it can, but not in an economical way, and providing greater throughput. What about the other panelists? What's your perspective on what is 5G and the role of satellite?
Philip speaking. Good morning, good afternoon. Well, I would add that probably satellite 5G is also a perfect tool to provide resilience to the terrestrial networks. Of course, be it for rural areas, be it for hard-to-reach locations, be it for outdoor private networks, be it for government use cases. I think where 5G and satellite could, I would say, get engaged together, or at least eventually marry together, is by providing resilience to the terrestrial networks. And on top of that, satellite is also probably a perfect platform to bring what I would call virtual ubiquity to all the professional users of terrestrial networks.
So virtual ubiquity, can you describe what you mean by that?
I mean, as Gary was introducing, perfect coverage for mobility use case. And again, there's land mobility, there's of course in flight, there's maritime needs. And when we speak or engage with those kind of industries, they are keen to, let's say they are asking us, can you really provide me over the world or over the planet ubiquity? And so I was trying to coin a new name, and I put it as virtual ubiquity by combining terrestrial and satellite. So let's see if this virtual can become a reality, but this is exactly what our industry is trying to achieve.
Thank you. Well said and well understood. Amir and Gil, anything you want to add in terms of what is 5G and what satellite brings to the 5G network of networks?
I can actually add, I can look at it from a different perspective. Of course, we know where satellite strength is, the coverage, resilience, and what are the use cases for satellite. But I want to look at the 5G from a bigger perspective. Actually, the 5G, it's called network of networks, is not just a buzzword. It is, I believe it's kind of a dream which is coming true. For years, satellite industry was alienized from other terrestrial networking. So it means that it's big, probably it was because of the complexity of the satellite systems. It was because of the difference of part of the knowledge that the satellite people or mindset that satellite people have from the networking. So we have all the fiber, terrestrial, point-to-point wireless even working closely, but satellite is not there. So I think 5G could be starting evolution point for that satellite will be just part of that network. It means that end user and end service provider doesn't even notice what is the backbone, what is the link behind that. And satellite will be transparently linking traffic and requirement like the other tools and the other means of transportation.
Thanks, Amir. So you've introduced what I think is a really important aspect of when we talk about 5G, which is that satellite is part of the network, and the network, if you will, is designed to include satellite. And I do want to talk about release 17 of 3GPP, which is a very somewhat daunting series of acronyms and titles. But before turning to the importance of release 17 and what it means, Gil, any final comments on what you see as what the 5G network is and the role of satellite? Gil?
First of all, thank you, David, for having us here for this panel. I agree with what my colleagues said before me, but I want to add on top of that 5G and satellite, from one hand, is to maintain the role of satellite in cellular, of extending coverage and resiliency, and this part which was spoken before. But I think, and this is the connection to the release 17 and 18 that we started to talk, and I'm sure the next question will be around that, is also how the satellite industry and the satellite networks can gain from the technology that 5G brings. And I think this is the near future, and this is part of what is going on today in the market, and we will see for the coming years, is how the satellite industry will start to adopt technologies that will come from the 5G. Virtualization, cloud, edge computing, those are the obvious things, but I think later on, you will probably touch that with the release 18 even and release 19. I'm sure you have questions around that as well. How it will be even bigger part of the satellite in the 5G and the 5G in the satellites. So I think 5G is bringing a lot of new things and new stuff like massive machine-to-machine connections and higher throughput, and the satellite will be part of that as well. But I think also on the technology level, there is a lot between satellite and 5G, and we are starting to see that today, and we will see it more and more in the coming years.
All right, so let me stay with you, Gil. I mentioned release 17. You've gone one step further and said release 18 and 19, and you're the first person who I've heard talk about release 19. For our audience's benefit, what is the significance of release 17? What is 18 going to cover? What is 19? And I think Amir was talking earlier how when we talk about networks, 5G really is the first time, my words, that satellite was designed to be part of, as opposed to a part or a part, meaning, somewhat not thought of or perhaps competitive. So give us a few minutes, couple of minutes on what is the significance of release 17 and what are 18 and 19 going to be about?
So I think release 17 started the terms of 5G NTN, non-terrestrial networks, which means let's expand the 5G to do other communication world like the satellite and making the 5G part of the way that satellite works. So release 17, for example, is more aiming for a low bitrate IoT kind of application, but it says direct to device. You can take an IoT device, you can take a phone call. Everybody are familiar, I'm guessing, with the publicity of iPhone 14 of Apple, where you can do an emergency SMS via satellite. And this is the part that starts in release 17, how to connect the satellite world into the 5G, how to bring 5G into satellite and allow a direct communication to satellite from a device. So release 17 is more focusing on the low bitrate IoT kind of application. Release 18 is supposed to take it to the next level, to higher bit rates, to a more broadband kind of connection. And release 18 will take it even further on. And I don't know if we will talk about 6G as well, but this is maybe a different form that we need to discuss, but this will take it even further down the road. When it will happen, this is the big question. 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, but this is the path. Release 17 is already out there. We are starting to see the application around that. Release 17, beside the part of low bitrate, is also talking about more of edge computing, which is taking part of the core function and bringing it to the edge. This is very, very good for the satellite industry, putting part of the cores next to the VSAT, putting the VSAT parts next to part of the cores, creating something that is like a cloud run kind of solution that can integrate with the satellite. And I'm guessing those kind of applications will start to emerge more and more in the coming year. And so Edge computing in satellite is something that is very required in order to improve. We all talk about LEO and MEO and NGSO kind of constellation, but even if you keep on staying in the GEO, and I think there is still room for GEO, the edge computing brings a lot of value into the satellite industry.
Thank you. So very good survey of releases 17, 18, and 19. Let me drill down a little further with the other panelists and get very bottom line. For the other panelists, what is the significance from a revenue and ultimately, we hope, profitability perspective? What new services have been developed, will be developed in the years to come as a result of release 17 and the prospective releases 18 and even 19? So who wants to take a first stab at really addressing the commercial significance of release 17?
So I'd say the major commercial benefit for the satellite industry is the ability to integrate itself into the large ecosystem, which is the cellular world, and in many ways also the terrestrial world on a bigger scale. The fact that our services will integrate, for example, integrate into SD-WAN networks that can provide resiliency to existing networks via standard interfaces. But maybe to talk about some just very, very specific examples, it does open, and I'll agree with Gil, it does open things around IoT, and particularly, very specific areas of IoT. And I would say industrial IoT is where, particularly, I'd say organizations like ourselves can really, really bring extra value. And being able to do that in a standards environment is going to actually expand the market scale. So yes, it's about services and applications, but if you're doing that within a standards framework, then you're actually opening up the bigger the ecosystem and the enlargement of your market. So there's two things going on here, which is the standardization ecosystem, building your market size, then the application. So IoT monitoring, significant infrastructure. And again, not trying to steal on Gil's word again, but the private networks and edge compute is an area that we see as being standardized within 5G, and there being a lot of use cases being developed. And they are very friendly towards satellite, whether it's a military application with somebody with an edge device on their back providing network support via standard 5G interface to their colleagues in a battlefield environment, whether it's a media use case of somebody supporting an occasional use event where you've got many devices in that 5G bubble connected via 5G and then actually doing processing locally at the edge, whether it's deploying solutions in mines, in ports, etc., where satellite can really, really bring an extra level of either reliability or just reach. So there are enabling technologies within it, which enable you to address bigger markets. But then there are use cases which come out, and again, use cases which are extremely natural use cases for the satellite industry.
Got it. And thanks. And we're starting to get questions. And the first question, which I'll post, you can see it came from an anonymous attendee, and we're actually, I think, addressing that. Really, what are the examples of companies working and commercializing releases 17 and prospectively 18 and 19? And what we've heard is IoT, private networks, edge computing. Let me give Philippe and Amir an opportunity to also address this question of what are the commercial opportunities with release 17 and prospectively 18 and 19. And let me just encourage the audience, if you have a question, again, post it through the Q&A function. We'll try to get to it in the time that we have available. If not, we will post responses to questions that we haven't been able to answer in the time available for this live webinar. So Philippe and Amir. Philippe, you want to go next? What are the commercial opportunities with release 17 and prospectively 18 and 19?
Well, I trust my colleagues already saying all, but trying to put that in my own words, I would say maybe the first stuff that is important for all of us is that thanks to release 17, we have a black and white definition and standardization of what could be, what should be the dialogue between 5G and satellite and 5G. So I think this is the real framework helping us to work and to work together, by the way, because we are pretty much interdependent if we want to make that happen. But again, the good news with release 17 is that it's really giving us collectively a framework to build those new use cases. Then coming to the use cases, I would say yes, most probably edge and industrial use cases, of course, in outdoor environments are probably the most interesting use case, or at least I would say that the early conversation we are having with our, let's say, either traditional customers or some new customers that are, I would say, curious of satellite 5G are exactly that. I would call that, in general, yes, private network. And one of the joke I would like to make, or I'm making with those early comments, is that in fact in the satellite, VSAT has been the prime generation of private networks, because we've been working with the oil and gas sectors. We've been working with again seaports. We've been working with, of course, land and maritime mobilities for years and years with satellite. And indeed, this is a typical use case for a private network, that is to say, a network that is independent to some extent from a traditional public network. And again, with this coming 5G SAT or SAT 5G, I think the skills and the experience we have had all of those years with VSAT private networks, we can bring that also to the terrestrial and mobile network operators. And of course, the mobile network operators and the terrestrial operators are, let's say, to some extent, much bigger than we are in the big telecom world. And so they will also bring a lot of their enterprise skills. And Gary mentioned SD-WAN, and of course SD-WAN could be also an interesting function that would see the perfect match between 5G and SAT and 5G. So I think the number one coming use case is everything related to outdoor private networks.
Thank you. And you mentioned, and we got a question which I'll share about a potential use case of maritime. Philippe or any of the other panelists, do you want to comment in response to this question? Do you see use cases in maritime 5G and integration of the terrestrial with the non-terrestrial in the maritime scenario? Philippe, do you want the first opportunity, or you want to pass to any of the fellow panelists?
At the first, I see one opportunity that would be, I would call that IoT for the maritime industries, where satellite 5G would bring additional, of course, coverage, additional ubiquity, and additional facility to monitor the containers at sea, to monitor anything at sea, thanks to the combination of the two technologies.
Thank you. That makes perfect sense. Before turning to the next question, Amir, any views on what we've been talking about, the potential use cases for 5G, the significance of release 17 and prospectively 18 and 19?
Yeah, actually, my colleagues mentioned many important points. I'm just going to summarize a little bit. So release 17, as Gil said, is focusing on direct satellite to device. The projection 10 years from now is 400 million IoT devices. I'll just repeat it to digest the number. 400 million IoT devices. And over these 400 million IoT devices are probably less than 15, 16 million are non-satellite, direct satellite to ground. So a big part of the money and revenue definitely goes to that market. But we know that players for that market are very specific. So it's not for all players. Still, I want to emphasize on release 18, which is not published yet, and I think it's much more complicated because it is adapting the old satellite market, old satellite systems to 5G network. And I think that's a butter and bread, because we can use all the advantage of SDN, virtualization, cloud, and most importantly, global orchestration to provide our traditional services in the best way, which is corporate network, as Philip mentioned, trunking. And with the benefit that we have, I'm probably early to this discussion, but with the benefit that we have from the 5G core, 5G cores today, it's not for future. Today, they can choose the best infrastructure according to the application. Now imagine if you have multi-satellite links, HTS GEO, which is perfect for some application, but not perfect for delay-sensitive application. We have also LEO OVP. I'm just coming with an example. For example, core banking system or trading, stock trading. So each second could mean millions of dollars to these guys. Now imagine there is a core banking system in Canada to US, and there are all means. There are fiber, satellite LEO, satellite GEO, and it goes to trade stock market in US. Of course, it goes to fiber. But if it goes to Japan or Australia, now the propagation delay on satellite OVP is much lower than, it's much faster than fiber. So the application, the core network, the 5G CN has this option to choose the LEO satellite over that. So it's a best combination, actually best optimal way of the cost and requirement can come out of this 5G without people like Gil and myself go and develop anything. It's already there and we can just use it.
Thanks, Amir. And you've touched on something that I think is really significant for, in particular, the NGSO segment of the industry, which is that you can actually send a faster signal, if you will, via satellite in low Earth orbit, for example, between two distant cities, let's say New York and London, or Tokyo, and much faster than a terrestrial fiber optic. And that, as you point out, for high frequency trading, milliseconds matter. So very much an important potential, or in real case, use case. I want to focus now on one area of opportunity for satellite. And I think it's an area that satellite is long played in, which is IoT, the Internet of Things. And I'll start with Amir and then look to the other members of the panel. But Amir, is satellite's role in a 5G network, is it really going to be narrowband only, or is it broadband? And what are some specific use cases? I mean, we've talked about the ubiquity of satellite, the fact that it can reach areas, remote mines, oil and gas. What is the IoT future in a 5G world for satellite? And I'll throw out some terms. You may want to focus on them or not, but we've read about enhanced mobile broadband, ultra reliable and low latency communications, massive machine type communications, acronyms galore. But in the IoT world, what are the current opportunities and what do you see as the future opportunities? And then I'll turn that over to the other panelists. Go ahead, Amir.
I want to actually do it because when we say IoT, we are talking about more than 10 different type of applications on IoT. So it's not one use case that we can say for that. For example, for hybrid IoT network for mostly populated areas, I think the LEO, the hybrid network of the 5G cellular with LEO could be still a very good case. And we already know that some companies have done some proof of concept on doing IoT and LEO and direct satellite to device also, which is a very good sign for us. I remember early this year in Washington show, there were many people doubted that 5G gets over, but now it's taking off. But the other use case that I said, I put a number there, 400 million IoT device, which is only 15 million or 16 million of that is non-satellite to ground, non-satellite to device, but it doesn't mean that revenue is shared the same. No, we have industrial IoT, which is a very money-making market there. And industrial IoT is a very good, we have many good use cases with SDSN geo satellite systems, software-defined satellite networks on geo, that they are perfect match for industrial IoTs. Like you said, oil and gas pipe, very far away areas. And I think that money may not have as much as the other type of IoT, or let's say city type of IoT things, but they make a very good revenue according to the industry requirements.
Got it. Okay, and we actually got a question, I think, that touches on the IoT, and I've shared it. And let me open it up to the other panelists to talk about IoT, and in particular address the question that you see on the screen, which is there a benefit of 5G for satellite IoT versus the low-ROI WAN? So who would like to address either this question or more broadly the Internet of Things and 5G?
I'll take a go at that first. So these are complementary technologies. We talk about, it's not just about satellite and it's not just about terrestrial. It's actually about how you bring the two technologies together. And I think in Intelsat, and I guess in many organizations, we use the term about hybrid services. And it's the goal that you actually bring a bit of satellite together with a bit of terrestrial, and you add one and one together and you end up getting three, because these things have never been tried before. So you look at a great technology like LoRaWAN, great coverage, really efficient use of power, low bandwidth. And you can combine that with a small flat panel electronically steerable antenna, and you're able to basically cover. And I'll give a use case which I've talked to a number of different organizations about, which is windmill farms. And you have many things that need to be monitored on the windmill, that you need something extremely reliable. You need to be able to react in real time. And they are often in locations that are not particularly well served by terrestrial technology. So putting together LoRaWAN, which will go directly to the IoT sensor, and then connecting into satellite to provide kind of low bandwidth backhaul, but with the ability to send back instructions into the IoT network based on what's been gathered from the sensors. So these are hybrid services and entirely complementary and compatible.
So keyword complementary in this case. Philippe and Gil, what's your view, either in response to this question or more broadly IoT and the opportunities it presents?
I would a few comments. I think, yes, as I guess that was Amir and Gil already said, that within 5G release 17, so there is room for, let's say, 5G satellite and 5G satellite IoT. But we need to look, or we need to have a closer look at which are those protocols and which are those standards that are being used by the industries. Because, yes, as of today, we have LoRaWAN, which is, of course, a standard that is deployed almost on a worldwide basis. You have initial projects by which you can carry LoRaWAN signal through satellite. And of course, you might know that Eutelsat is no stranger to that, because we are having a proof of concept in that respect. But there's also a lot more, let's say, platforms that are using, I would call that, proprietary technologies, and that are also compatible with satellite. And then with 5G and 5G IoT and 5G satellite, now we have also the protocol that are being used by the major telcos of the world, namely NB-IoT and LTE-M. And of course, I think for us as the satellite industry, we need to have a deeper look at those standards because they are the main two standards that are pushed and promoted by the terrestrial and the mobile network operators. So hopefully this is where at some point in time, probably not short term, but I would rather say mid-term, that we would find a way to combine and make sure that all of those systems are completely hybrid.
Thank you. Thank you. Gil, any final words on this topic?
Yeah, I will just add on that I think what it brings is there's multiple technologies, and putting direct to satellite and satellite in addition to that with the 5G and with LoRa, it gives simply more options for services, for service operators like Intelsat, like Eutelsat. For example, you can do direct to satellite in some places. You can do aggregation in other places, and aggregation over satellite with a VSAT, with edge computing, can have a lot of benefits, even in the example that Gary used. Sometimes you need the decision to be even faster than a few milliseconds over satellites. You want it locally for some cases. So it gives a lot more options and a lot more flexibilities in creating services for the satellite operators, for the service providers. And it's just another layer that I think is now being added and will contribute. So it can be low bandwidth IoT, but it can also be aggregation that then it turns it into high bit rate. When you aggregate hundreds of sensors, it's no longer a low bit rate kind of application.
Thank you. And I was going to ask a question, and we actually got a very similar question from the audience, so I'll just post it. And this comes from Matt Daneman. We've talked about opportunities, and there are a lot of opportunities, but the other side of the coin are, what are the challenges? And Matt is asking that very same question, and let me open it up to all the panelists. What are the challenges that the satellite industry is facing in the ongoing 3GPP process, the development of 5G, and in particular, has the industry, the satellite industry, have they collaborated to address any gaps in what the 5G standard defines as service objectives? So broadly, what are the challenges? Who wants to take the less?
I will start with that.
Yes,
because I think the main challenges in that area is actually one of the weakest points of satellites over the years. We are not a standardized industry. Each one of us is doing things differently. Each operator doing it differently, each vendor doing it differently. Look about all the new constellations that are coming out there. Each one of them is defining their own way of operation and standards that they want to use. They create their own standards. And I think this is one of the things, maybe one of the major things that 5G brings into the satellite industry, is the standardization of a lot of things. Starting from basic things like interfaces for service management, going into MEF, going into Presto and other type of standards that simply simplifies the way that operators can offer services. And I think this is what is maybe the biggest challenges for the satellite industry, for the equipment vendors like Gilat, like SpaceBridge, from one end, to the operators like Intelsat and Eutelsat from the other end, how we move into a more standardized way. Starting from the basic of a service orchestration and service management, and all the way, release 18 and release 19, the big thing I think that they are promising is also the air interface. I already see Gary smiling on that. He probably will have a lot to say about it. Intelsat are very active there. So all the way to waveforms that will be standardized, and maybe even someday a modem of one vendor working on a network of another vendor, but this is down the road. And I think this is the path, and this is the big challenge. How do we get into that? How we all work together to go into that area? Thank you.
And you have highlighted a real challenge of standardization. And I know there are efforts, Intelsat, I believe Eutelsat as well, are working through various trade associations to develop at least movement towards standardization. Philippe, I saw you nodding your head vigorously at one point. So let me offer you the opportunity. Talk about challenges and really the topic just introduced of standardization. Philippe? Philippe, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Yes, no, I think Gil said it all when it comes to working together to leave a world of vertical integration and going to a bit more horizontal integration and to go to a world of standards. So definitely it will take some time before one modem can speak to another. And I think this is down the road, but yes, most probably it will happen. And of course, 5G, NTN, and all the releases that are coming are pretty much helping that. Probably there's a lot more challenges, in fact. And probably one of the challenges is, I think I would say satellite operators, and I would include all the satellite operators, we need to spend a bit more time speaking to the industrial partners like SpaceBridge and Gilat Satellite Networks today, because this is, I think the two of us, we are really the same side, I mean, one side of the coin each other, but we are the same coin, and we really need to work more and more together to deliver that promise. And probably one part, which is, I would call that the tip of the iceberg that is visible, would be the IT tools and the OSS, BSS part of our industry that could be hopefully more rapidly integrated into the 5G, I would say, terrestrial specs, or within the 5G terrestrial standard that are very well known by the mobile network operators and very well known by the terrestrial operators. And I think also what I noted recently, and I guess you guys have all seen that, is that the big IT companies, and I won't name them today, but are also entering this satellite 5G space, and they are, at least from time to time, coming to us and coming also to our customers to discuss the approach of providing them with new OSS, BSS features that are able to drive, I would say, terrestrial connectivity and satellite connectivity. So, but definitely a lot of challenges, but happy to face them and to overcome them all together.
Thank you. And I do want to give Jerry and Amir an opportunity to talk about challenges. We did get a question, and I'm wondering, and you see it on the screen, is spectrum one of the challenges for a satellite to fulfill its role in 5G? That's been thrown out. But Jerry, you want to go next and just talk about challenges, and you can obviously address spectrum or standardization or any other challenges that you and Intelsat are working on.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, one of the big challenges is bringing our ecosystem with us, and then Gil put together the almost word perfect response. So it's good to know that everything we've been trying to communicate to our ecosystem partners is getting through. And I wouldn't add to anything he said, but that's exactly the direction and the challenges, because it's a significant overhaul of our architecture, of the flexibility of our network, of the standards in our network. But maybe go to a more philosophical level. It's cultural change, but you know, we've standards are great, and the mobile operators have benefited from standards. But you know, they've got a problem these days. The mobile operators with 5G is they're building out infrastructure for billions and billions of dollars. And a lot of the value of the traffic on those networks is going to the companies who are not investing in the networks. So as we start looking into this world of a standardized 5G NTN, we've got to be open to those challenges, that we're going to invest a hell of a lot. Putting satellites up in space is a lot of capital. And we have to be sure that we're going to be the ones that are going to get the returns. It's quite clear that the money that's been spent on 4G and 5G, the returns are going, in many cases, to people who aren't investing the capital in the networks. So we've got to be very, very smart. And that's, you know, it's good that we're talking about use cases. And that's why it's very important for organizations like Intelsat, like Eutelsat, to be focused around how we can get higher up the value chain. We're not going to compete with Google. We're not going to compete with Amazon, but we've got to find our niches where we do add extra value beyond purely connectivity, because somebody else is going to come and eat our lunch. So that is probably the big challenge, because it's a lot of capital and you got to get the return. Regarding spectrum, you know, where do you want to start? I think we've kind of come to an agreement with the cellular industry, because that's where a lot of this discussion is. You know, we're moving out of the C-band together with our our industry partners in the US and giving a part of that spectrum. There's similar things going on in other countries. I think we still got kind of communications to make to explain the values of KU and KA band remaining satellite bands. That's ongoing, but that's to me that's just normal. That's the way our industry works. I think we're in a much more stable position than we might have been 4 or 5 years ago, I think.
Thank you. And stepping out of my moderator role, often I am in the spectrum fights. It is a global battle. The appetite of the mobile networks is voracious, and it's a constant struggle to assure that the satellite industry maintains spectrum rights that are critical for current and future services, and then acquires future spectrum to fuel these new services. A lot of them we've been talking about. I think Amir, you have been very patient. I want to give you an opportunity to really talk about the challenges. We've heard about standardization as one challenge, spectrum. There are others. What's your perspective?
I love this question, honestly. And the point is that we are all advertising all 5G. So I want to be a little negative voice and take from what Gary said. There is a huge capex on doing such a thing. And there are always these hesitation. We always say that the first one in the market will have early access to 70% of the market share. But we always know that the first guys may also fail totally and open up the room for the others. For example, we have to go 10 years, we have to time travel 10 years from now and look back to see if SpaceX is more successful or Amazon Kuiper. Early comer or later who learns from the experience of the others. So I think we had disastrous experience in the past 2 decades on standardization. And all these gentlemen here know exactly what I'm talking about. There's no sat lab anymore. There's no real standardization. So the first thing that Gil said, it's a problem of the satellite mindsets. So we have to change our mindset. And who can force us? It's exactly Gary and Philip. The satellite operator can force us to change our mindset and sit around the table instead of saying, okay, I will do something proprietary that will make only for me revenue, only for me, to more sharing type of mindset. There are many technical challenges. There are many technical gaps. Standardized product is not as efficient as non-standardized products, but it is more covering. Imagine if you go to an Italian restaurant, or if you go to a restaurant that makes Italian, Mexican, and all type of these things. So you may not get the same quality. But at the end, I think the market will not allow us to ignore 3GPP. And 5 to 10 years from now, anyone who ignores this standardization will be eliminated from the markets.
Thank you, Amir. And thanks for pointing to the operators as the ones who are going to lead, we hope, the movement towards standardization. And I think you've given us a topic for a future webinar in what will be early next year on standardization. Want to shift gears a little. We did get a question which touches upon a topic that it's been discussed in passing during this this hour, and we're about 10 minutes away from the top of the hour. And the question goes towards a particular aspect. Sorry, no, didn't mean to post that one. Let me just go. Here it is. GEO. We've heard about GEO, NGSO, or MEOs and LEOs, and bringing it back to the 5G world. We've heard about, obviously, the physics of LEOs in particular, lower latency than GEOs. But if I could ask the panelists, and certainly our operators have a multi-orbit strategies, including the case of Eutelsat, a proposed investment merger with a LEO operator, OneWeb. But let's get a little granular in the 5G world. What is the particular advantages of GEO versus NGSO. I'll include MEO in the NGSO along with LEO. You see the question here, which is focused on GEO, but I'd like to broaden it out to GEO as well as MEO LEO. What does each orbit bring in terms of commercial opportunities in a 5G world? Let me unfairly ask Philippe first, since without talking about the OneWeb pending merger, but what's your perspective on LEO as well as GEO since Eutelsat, and then I'll turn to the other panelists. Philippe?
Thank you. I think GEO is there, and it was said already that there's a lot of good use case that we can still run on GEO, and I think, and cellular backhaul being one of those, and there will be still a good need of GEO satellite connectivity to run some major use case. And especially that, as you all guys know, and we all know today in the industry, that GEO is also turning to HTS, high throughput satellite, and very high throughput satellite. So we are really able to deliver super high capacity at very affordable price points for the benefit of the end user. So I think that would be probably the main characteristic of GEO for the coming years. Of course, LEO is a wonderful perspective. It's already in early operation. Of course, it brings lower latency, but then we need to see if there is hundreds of use cases for low latency. I think it will come in time progressively. Where we like the project and the idea of this GEO and LEO combination as a use case, and of course as an operator, is precisely that, is to be in a position to provide the best of both worlds to the benefit of the customers, to the benefit, I would say, existing GEO customers that may take a second look at LEO to bring, I would say, probably additional uplinks, additional resilience. Then we might see that to deliver edge computing that was mentioned by Gil, we could also use GeoSat because it will be in a position to run a lot of downloads at a very affordable perspective, while using the LEO to run the refresh uplinks that you would need on the software updates for the edge servers, etc., etc. So I think the two architecture will remain, and the beauty of the combination is, in fact, in the combination itself. Like you would say, the proof of the pudding is in eating the pudding.
Thank you for the very good analogy. And Jerry, let me turn to you as the other operator on this panel to talk about, again, in the context of 5G, does orbit matter? So Jerry, and then I'll get the very different perspective from the manufacturers, the equipment guys.
I think the answer is no. It doesn't really matter, and you know we've got to take as kind of the satellite players coming into the cellular world is take away that level of complexity, whether it's GEO, MEO, or LEO. You deploy whatever the customer needs, and it might be a mix. It might just be LEO. It might just be GEO. We've got to take a step back from, you know, these kind of very kind of satellite focused, orbit focused discussions and say, well, what actually is the customer requirement? What is the best thing for trunking? What is the best thing for cellular backhaul? What's the best thing for IoT? And you map it against the capabilities. You know, our strategy is clearly we want to work multi-orbit. You know, what is coming up in GEO? GEO's got some really, really exciting stuff coming up in terms of software-defined satellites. It's going to be the first time you're going to have a telecoms technology where you can decide in real time where you place your capacity on the globe. And there's no other technology that can do that. So it's a function of demand, which we know demand is heterogeneous, both in time and space, time and location. And GEO has that great capability of focusing lots of capacity in a particular area where you know there's big demand. And if you can make that software defined, and you're defining that in real time, you're starting to have a level of functionality in geo, which is really, really incredible and really unique in the whole telecoms world. And then you combine that together, which is something which is lower latency for specific applications. And then, you've really got something good, because, LEO, it is the kind of the butter is spread evenly all over the world. Whereas geo has this ability to be extremely heterogeneous in where it gives capacity. So there's roles for them all, but we've got to kind of extract ourselves from this kind of orbit question when we talk to our customers.
Thanks, Jerry. And I think you've touched upon an important topic, which is many customers don't care what orbit it is, as long as you meet their service requirements and price requirements. And as Philippe pointed out, geo has certain advantages, particularly with high throughput and very high throughput satellites. You've pointed out software defined. So there's a role for geo, there's a role for LEO. Again, it depends on what does the customer require. Let me go to the ground guys. Again, with the broad question, does orbit matter? Obviously, you've got to work in the reality that you're developing products and services that communicate with satellites in various orbits. But who wants to talk? Amir, let me go to you.
Can start. Yeah, definitely. Of course, it matters. So when it goes to 5G and implementation, technical-wise, totally different world. If you talk about the GEO SDSN or LEO onboard processing, for example, generally we have, sorry, I'm getting a little bit too technical subject right now, but there are 3 different ways to handle 5G. Either we are 100% 5G compliant. It means that physical layer is also going to be according to the 5G cellular standard, which is mostly for direct to SAT, mostly for LEO and those things. Or we are working as a bridge mode. So we pass all the network layer and communication layer of 5G over satellite, which again, this is not very efficient because 5G is not really, the overheads are too much, they're overkill. The third way is, I think most of the ground segment vendors will go for that, is merging the benefit of the satellite physical layers, mostly on GEO, and adopting the upper layers of the 5G, 3GPP and orchestration and communication. So for GEO, I think this is going to be more reasonable. Then the physical layer, I think, will be different from LEO to GEO. The other thing, I think it's from what Gary said, software-defined satellite networks. We have right now, we have Space Aspire, we have 702X, we have OneWeb. They're going to be launched in a year or two, all of them. And the ground segment has to orchestrate and manage all the resources on the satellites, not only on the ground. Imagine now there is one core to work with the 5G core to manage the physical resources on the ground and to manage the physical resources, power, capacity, beam, everything on the satellites. So this is an extraordinary thing for GEO, which is totally different with LEO. On LEO, we have a very complex constellation management. We have jitter mitigation because the LEO is moving and it's a delay sensitive application. So we have to really get rid of the jitter. So our challenges are technical challenges. I'll pass it to Gil, but it's totally different from orbit to orbits.
Thank you. Thank you. Gil, same perspective. It's not one size fits all for sure. What do you think?
So first of all, I totally agree with Gary, because at the end of the day, what is matter is that you bring the right service to the customer, and customers are different. Some of them want to pay more on equipment, some of them want to pay less, some of them are more sensitive to latency, some of them less, and you need the flexibility to adjust to all of that. Just as a little simple example of the complexity, a LEO or a MEO terminal is much more expensive and complex in terms of the antenna and the tracking and the software that you need, and compared to a gear terminal, which is a very simple site, no tracking, very cheap antenna, and you have a solution. Some needs that, some needs that. The idea is that you need a software-defined satellite that goes with a software-defined network, a network that can deal with that. that can give you the flexibility of managing any type of application in any kind of orbit. Next generation systems are multi-orbit systems. They need to be elastics in order to allow themselves to deal with the complexity of the network. You already mentioned that. New generation satellites were going to change the way that they are lighting the ground several times an hour. A system must cope with that, regardless if it's a GEO, MEO, LEO, or even all the three of them together. And this is the next generation. This is the challenge from our point of view as equipment vendor. This is the big challenge, but this is what will allow us to bring to operators like Intelsat, like Eutelsat, the flexibility to offer any service. So the ground segment must be software defined exactly as the satellite. Need to adjust, need to be elastic, needs to be agile, to adjust to any kind of requirement that the service requires in order to deliver the best service to customers on any orbit, on any platform.
Thank you. And that's a very tall order. But I do know from hosting other panels, and we have it in our library, which the audience can see some of the previous panels on the ground segment. There is great progress in achieving that holy grail of a ground segment that can communicate with satellites in various orbits and perhaps different constellations. So we're just past the top of the hour, and we do have 3 questions. I think they can be answered in short order. So with the indulgence of our panelists, if we can go just a few minutes longer, I'm going to pose a question, and I would just ask one panelist, no need to go around the horn, to see if perhaps we can have a quick answer. The first question, as you can see, there's reference earlier to a 5G private network. Does someone want to take an effort to answer what is meant by an open 5G private network?
Open is not necessarily a term I would use. A 5G private network. It's open in terms of its open standards technology and 5G standardized. It's private because you don't offer the network up to the public, and it doesn't use public frequencies, as in frequencies that are allocated to the mobile operators. It uses frequencies that are kept for private localized networks, so they're generally not deployed on a national basis. So they're often deployed, in harder to reach areas for things that are happening on a short-term basis. The mines, the ports, the occasional use type examples would be other use cases. So I don't know if the term open is one I would use in relation to that, but that's what we talk about when we talk about 5G private networks.
Oh, thanks, Jerry. The next question, again, I'll look to one panelist to volunteer. A few years ago, we heard a lot about HAPS, high altitude platform systems. Is there a role for HAPS in 5G satellite, the 5G satellite ecosystem? I think there's been, some pullback in HAPS investments, but does one of the panelists feel okay? Go.
Right now, at least what we've been seeing into this release 17 and at the end, apps are part of it, are part of the release, and it's part of the NTN specification and architecture. And in fact, I had a check this very morning in preparation of our call. And yes, I did find a lot of interesting, useful information related to apps. Then the question we all have in mind is probably how. Yes, of course, what would be the business model of those apps operators compared or complementary to terrestrial and complementary to satellite operators. But I think we can find a way where we would nicely complement all each other. And where I probably see an interesting value proposition would be that for us, again, the satellite operators, and of course with our industrial partners, in order to provide, again, probably backup and backhaul to those apps operators.
Good, thank you. So there is a future. There is a role.
There is hope.
Okay. The last question I want to post, and we did get one broad question, which I'll invite our panelists to answer in writing, which we would share on the screen. But hopefully the narrower the remaining two questions you see now on the screen really goes to is 4G LTE. Is that part of the satellite to device paradigm? Does anyone want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I can answer that. Without going too technical, 4G over satellite probably won't happen. It's related also to the waveform and the way that it works. Again, I won't dive too technical on that, but this is why 5G is taking the path of direct to satellite, because, and this is why we need release 18 as well coming down the road, because there are some challenges on the waveform that needs to be addressed, needs to be addressed on the 5G level. 4G sadly is not, or happily, it depends on which side you're looking on it, is probably won't be part of that because of the waveform, because of the way it operates.
Oh, thanks for the clear answer. As I said, we have one remaining question. It's very open-ended. It comes from I'll post it, but will not take time unless one of the panelists desperately wants to respond to it. As I said, this is anonymous, but perhaps it comes from Elon Musk. And we will share this with the panelists, and if they care to, they can respond in writing. And again, we'll share that along with the video link, which should appear at gbf.org tomorrow. So this does bring us to the end of our webinar. The question that you see on the screen, we'll do our best to get a response. As I said, you can watch the recording of this webinar and previous webinars on gbf.org. Check out if you missed the previous webinars, and can also subscribe on GVF's YouTube channel, which is at GVF4, the 4 satellite. This was the last event of the series for 2022. Look forward to continuing the series next year, and appreciate the very good suggestion for one of our early webinars on standardization. And so let me wish our audience and our panelists a very happy holiday season and a very happy, healthy, and prosperous 2023. And thank you all for participating, in particular, our wonderful panel. Thank you and goodbye.